Hi again. Thank you, Gracia, and thank you, Jens, for your inspiring presentation. We are crossing now the equator of our conference, and we are going to move to a trending topic, digitization, and a horizontal topic that affects us all. I think if we might think of something positive that has happened during this pandemic is the technological push and how it has allowed the economy somehow to continue, but also has allowed us to be in touch, to be in contact with our colleagues, with the friends, with the people we love. I would like to introduce you now to our next three panelists. They are going to share with us some opportunities and good practices that can inspire the action of public administrations in the area of digitization. We have with us Mr. Luis Viegas Cardoso. He's a senior expert on digital technology and innovation at the advisory service at the President of the European Commission. We also have with us Ursula Rosenwiesler, Head of Department for Strategic Performance Management and Public Sector Innovation of the Austrian Federal Ministry for Arts, Culture, Civil Service and Sports. And last but not least, Ms. Elisa Roller, Head of Unit in the Recovery and Resilience Task Force in the Secretariat General of the European Commission, SG.RECOVER. So, Mr. Viegas, we will start with you. The floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, Izan, and good morning to all participants. It's a great honor to be here with you celebrating the 40 years of the European Institute of Public Administration. I was asked to speak this morning about digital transformation of the public sectors, and I'll focus my time precisely around the theme of digitalization and the importance of it for Europe's future. Three areas of digital transformation that are key for the public sector. The first one is about how technology and innovation are changing. Innovation toolbox is changing as innovation in the industrial area is different from innovation in the digital area. In the post-war industrial age, innovation typically took place in incremental steps. Dedicated research teams, typically in long-established companies, would develop new products and services. The innovation itself often consisted of an improvement or enhancement to an existing product or service which was known by incremental innovation. Today, while incremental innovation is still valid, disruptive innovation has become the new norm of success. Often referred to as knowledge-based capital, intangible assets have become the key ingredients of modern-day corporate success, such as design, software, data, business model, and organizational innovation, just to name a few. Copyright and links to entrepreneurial universities that facilitate knowledge transfer are also recognized as significant. In fact, today's innovation doesn't rely on well-developed industrial infrastructures, power plants, water supply, well-connected transport and communication networks, but rather more on top-notch digital infrastructure, broadband, 5G, supercomputational power, large-scale cloud computing facilities, among others. For example, many of Europe's largest tech companies were born in Sweden. The country is the second tech hub in the world on a per capita basis, producing $6.3 billion companies per million people compared to Silicon Valley's 8.1. In fact, early and substantial public investments in digital infrastructure are cited as one of the key reasons for this outcome. Sweden's average internet speed today is the third highest in the world and the fourth in superfast broadband. Another example is South Korea, that was just named most innovative country in the world by the Bloomberg Index. Recently, they tested 5G networks in automated bases during the Winter Olympics. So governments deploying state-of-the-art digital infrastructures, they really contribute to the digitalization of the countries itself, also advancing the digitalization of public and private sector. Secondly, if the industrial age was about standardization, the digital age is about customization. Before, companies wanted to develop as much products as possible with the lowest price and always looking at the same model, like the typical 4-team manufacturing approach. But today, companies need to adapt to customers and develop a user centricity approach. In fact, the extensive data trails that people leave online and offline are facilitating this trend, with more and more companies across sectors able to anticipate customers' expectations with precision. Personalization and the ability to match supply and demand and using technology to deliver products and services effectively and rapidly in a user centricity approach are key. Now, companies and public sector as well with existing business and do it in a customized way by offering an added value service to the clients that usually are happier than before. However, the same should occur in governmental bodies and public administrations that need to offer tailor-made services to citizens. Also, in public domains, areas where governments have a high stake, customization should be the cornerstone of future public services. For example, Singapore is using personalizing classroom learning through the use of data analytics. With the average primary school class consisting of up to 40 pupils, teachers have typically found it hard to personalize learning for each individual student. In fact, the government of Singapore is exploring innovative use of emerging technologies to enrich the learning experience and enhance the quality of teaching, enabling everyone to achieve their full potential. A key feature includes personalized learning using analytics, whereby data relating to the student on school attendance, test results, participation in class, as well as self-assessments and teacher assessments, is gathered and combined to draw out crucial insights into students' learning strengths and difficulties. The goal is to help teachers build better pedagogical programs, empower students to take an active part in their learning, target at risk student populations through personalized interventions, and access factors affecting completion and student success. Thirdly, and my last point, I would like to bring the concept of the data economy and the need for public entities to enter into the data revolution. Also, one very important change for public administrations is the use and reuse of public sector data, something that governments and public entities really need to catch up. In fact, data in particular is emerging as the key resource for and enabler of innovation. So why not making it also as an enabler to modernize the public sector? Data analytics allow public and private organizations to quickly grasp patterns in user preference and problems, thereby enabling more informed decision making and, if necessary, targeted interventions that improve performance and productivity for citizens. Digitizing public services is also critical to Europe's competitiveness and long-term prosperity. The quality and the efficiency of the public sector and the services it provides are inextricably linked to the social and economic performance of a country. They also play a crucial role in development of citizens' human capital and thus their future prospects. The promise of a digital power government is thus the delivery of a more targeted, more efficient public service, both for businesses or citizens. In fact, the exponential rise in available data, along with the development of new computational tools, open new opportunities to improve policy design and delivery. Thanks to data analytics, it is now possible to identify those issues that need to be addressed, estimate their relevance, and stimulate the impact of proposed policies with an unprecedented level of accuracy. Valuable policy insights can stem from combining data sets that have not previously been brought together, underlining the crucial importance of linking data across policy areas, sectors, territories, and applications. For example, Estonia is developing its own concept of moving towards a digital society. Since declaring its independence in 1991, Estonia has embarked on an ambitious digital journey, placing technological investments at the center of its strategy to modernize and reshape public governance, simply people's life, and support business growth. In fact, in just 30 years, Estonia has become one of the world's most connected and technology advanced countries. In 1997, 97% of Estonian schools were online. In 2000, so more than 20 years ago, Estonia declared access to internet as a basic human right. E-voting was introduced in 2007, and since 2015, people across the world are able to apply to Estonia e-residency. So even if it is a small country, it's a large and a very strong startup community and a tech hub. Estonia has been leading the development and rollout of innovative solutions for the economy and society, such as intelligent transportation system or high-tech delivery robots. The country also uses blockchain and just recently is home to the only NATO accredited cyber defense center. Dear participants, and just to finalize, as technology is developing faster than projected, giving rise to a technology shift that has the potential to defy human control and surpass the intellectual activities of any human being, the development of even better technology could lead to an intelligent explosion. Europe can play an important role in the world scene, and public sectors are having the cornerstone decision on using its widely recognized values and principles to build global regulatory norms and frameworks that ensure a human-centric and ethical development of emerging technologies. Due to our privacy settings, much of them enforced by the public sector, but also respect for people's data, citizens feel safer and more reliable on using technologies in Europe than in other countries. So having the opportunity to speak today here at the European Institute of Public Administration to so many academic experts, professors and researchers, I would also like to challenge you to take part in our policy discussions around shaping Europe's digital future. We are now designing 2030 digital targets of Europe's digital decade, an initiative presented by President von der Leyen at the State of the Union address, and we'll be delighted to hear your views until the 9th of March. Your vision, your knowledge, and your contribution will be an added value for all policymakers. So I'd like to challenge you and to ask you to engage and participate in the future discussions about the modernization of the public sector administration. Thank you so much, Irene, and I pass you the floor. Thank you, Izan. Not have your background.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for the call to action. I will invite people to Google Digital Targets 2030, and then you will be able to find the link. Otherwise, obviously, you can contact EIPA and we can help you if you are interested in participating. Many interesting drives by Luis. We could actually organize another event on the potential and the risks also on the data economy, how a user-centric approach can be also challenging in terms of data protection and freedom. But we will invite you for a follow-up conversation on this one. So we continue then with Ms. Ursula Rosenbichler. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A wonderful good morning. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Ursula Rosenbichler, and I work as head of the Department for Strategic Performance Management and Public Sector Innovation at the Austrian Federal Ministry for Arts, Culture, Civil Service and Sport. My department covers a broad spectrum of activities, mostly centered on cross-cutting issues. We developed strategies, instruments for quality and knowledge management. We work on monitoring, evaluation, and the further development of Austria's performance management. We foster open government and public participation, and we design and implement digitalization and innovation projects. To provide opportunities to experiment and learn, we create the GovLab Austria, Austria's first public sector innovation lab. All of these activities are seconded by our seminars, support and consultancy across the public sector. With our partners, we contribute to a large-scale cultural change process that enables the public sector to address the huge challenges of our times. Cultural change is the topic I want to talk about because for us, the digital transformation is most of all a cultural change process. Overall, we are quickly growing into a new paradigm where all actions of citizens and civil servants will be digitalized, or at least will grow a digital twin. Without a doubt, data-driven decision-making, machine and deep learning are fruitful outlooks to the administrational work. But still, we don't know much about how these features can be utilized in an efficient and transparent way, and especially where to deploy them effectively. However, by now we already developed an understanding of opportunities that digital transformation brings to the public sector. One of those opportunities is in the area of efficiency and administrative reform. E-government could help us to optimize services for citizens and businesses. We could react way quicker to citizen inquiries, enable digital and thus faster and easier interactions between state, businesses and citizens. Data also gives us the opportunity to observe societal developments more closely. We could be more precise, efficient, and proactive in making forecasts concerning the labor market, sector-specific changes, or general economic development. Data enables us to have precise predictions on traffic volume, the general public health or energy distribution scheme, or so on. The opportunities of the digital transformation for the public sector are enormous. However, as big as the opportunities are, the questions seem to be even bigger. Digital transformation will only work if we know how to use it, and the ways we are going to use digital technologies will be very diverse. The public sector is one of the most diverse occupation fields we have in our society. So I think it is pretty safe to say that the digital transformation will unfold in many different variants. There will be no one-size-fits-all solution. Concluding the questions we have to answer is less if the public sector will be transformed, because it will, and how this transformation will be configured and shaped. Let me now give you some insights on how we try to shape this transformation process in the Austrian public sector. It is vital for efficient processes to be coordinated and to develop a basic framework for digital interactions. In order to ensure this, we do a lot of work on digital consolidation. In Austria, this work is done by several ministries, coordinated by a central task force. What do we mean by digital consolidation? What we are trying to do is assessing the needs and structure of different administrational departments. The goal is to provide a common framework and thus a digital starting point. How are we trying to achieve this? There is progress in the conception and further development of Austrian data centers. Those centers should be able to securely store relevant data and make it accessible to administrational units. In order to digitally transform, those will provide the public sector with the basic infrastructure. We also provide strategies on shared services. Once the strategy is finished, organizational units of the Austrian administration should profit from the same processes for the same services. We try to identify key technologies in an early stage. We are developing a basic knowledge system on which of the emerging technologies can be utilized, and especially for what purpose they could be used. Another example of our work on standardized and structured licenses model. Sharing the same quality and quantity of licenses and digital rights will enable to work smoothly on an operative level. It will avoid decentralized negotiations and therefore is probably less cost intensive. We already talked about the digital transformation as a cultural change process. Managing the transformation will be managing the expertise of the staff. For Austria, this will be an essential point as 90,000 employees will be retired within the next 10 years. So we will have an intense onboarding process over the next decade. In order to do this probably, we will have to look at the digital qualifications an employee has to fulfill in the future. We are doing this by generating a typical life cycle model of the work on an average civil servant. The goal is to figure out which digital interactions, which use cases, and therefore which skills are necessary in a futuristic public sector. If we want to digitally transform public services, we have to create a framework to use the potential of the civil servants and support the development of those. Our academy is continuing to improve its educational offers for employees. By this, we want to provide a common development basis in order to achieve the goal of digital transformation, an efficient, effective, and citizen-oriented civil service. So far, I've spoken a lot about the present, but what's about the future? Currently, we do not know all the different applications of the digital world. Still, we have to lead the way by showing how it could be done. Concluding, my department decided to provide examples on how the digital transformation could be applied in the future. Currently, for example, I'm leading a project financed by the European Commission, which aims to foster futuristic innovative approaches in the administration in multiple ways. One of them is to provide agent-based models to simulate the effects of certain policy measures prior to actual implementation, and there is a lot more to come. As I've described in this address, the digital transformation of the public sector is a very promising but still challenging task. In order to ensure a sustainable digital transformation, we have to proactively steer the cultural and structural development of the administration system towards structural learning. From this point of view, the digital transformation will be especially a task of redesigning organizations in a way that it is able to reflect its own position, being able to process new information and successfully integrate a new information in its own structures. And this is what our department, but also administrational colleagues from around Europe are trying to do in our everyday work. This is what we have to do because without any doubt, the future of the public sector is a digital one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that Austria is an example that high mountains are not an impossible obstacle for digitization of a country. Let's move to our last panelist, Ms. Roller. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that Luis was saying at the start of this panel as to the Commission's priorities with regards to the digital age. I think he's given a fantastic overview of where we are with in terms of public administrations and the digitalization. So I won't repeat many of the things that he said. As you all know, a major consequence of the pandemic has been that the digitalization of our society and economy has accelerated. And it's a trend that is here to stay. And we, as public administrations, whether at European level, national level, regional level, or local level, we will need to adapt accordingly. I think that we have a responsibility towards our citizens, and the pandemic has really brought this to light, that we need to digitalize the day-to-day experience of our citizens. We really need to have the reflex of saying things like, why can't we do this digitally? Whether it's getting an e-prescription from your doctor or avoiding the hassle from going from one administration to the other to get a paper, a signature, a stamp. I think these things have really, the pandemic in that respect has really brought those issues to light. I want to say a couple of words of where we are with digital public services in the EU, and the previous speaker has given many examples of how it works in her country. And I think although we see a lot of improvement, I think we still have a lot of work to do. We also see important differences between member states, and some of those examples, the good examples Luis was mentioning. But let me maybe focus on a couple of areas where we think a lot more work needs to be done. First of all, it's clear that demand for digital public services among citizens is growing. 67% of EU internet users who needed to submit forms to public authorities did so online in 2019. So we really need to look at the extent to which pre-filled forms by public administrations are available to citizens, and how we can improve that. The second thing is on the business side, we still have a lot more work to do on how public services are accessible to businesses on both sides of borders. So to what extent basic public services for businesses, such as starting a business or conducting regular business operations, are available online and across borders in other EU member states. A third challenge I think we need to be looking at is open data policy. So it's also about improving the data quality, the impact, and here we see a lot of differentiation across the different member states. So broadly speaking, these are, I think, the three main challenges that we have with regards to citizens, businesses, and the quality of our data and its transparency. Maybe also focus some more on some particular gaps that we see. First of all, and it's linked into some of the things I mentioned before, it's about the untapped potential of digital services. So we need to look at what digital service we offer, how much the uptake is, and who is excluded from that, whether it's older people who just don't know how to access, don't have access to a computer, or don't have the skills to do so, or don't understand how to do so. So we need to look not just at the provision of digital services, but also look at who has access, and more importantly, who doesn't. A second issue is the limited take-up of electronic IDs. Only 15% of national administrations use national electronic ID schemes. And this is also very limited in the cross-border context. It also makes it very, very difficult for more sensitive or authentication procedures to be available online. So for example, whether it's taxes or whether it's other sensitive issues, health, where citizens have a difficult time accessing, for example, their health records if there is no national electronic ID scheme. So in many ways, that is the precursor for making a lot of our digital, our public services digitally available. The other thing is the issue of interoperability of data. What we see is a lot of differences, legal obstacles by the way data is used and how it's licensed. So data is often collected multiple times, but it remains unused. And this can be quite frustrating for citizens who are trying to, or businesses in particular, who are trying to access information and it is not available. And then finally, I think the pandemic has also highlighted the sectors where digitalization is really urgent, and that's perhaps justice, with court proceedings which were not able to be carried out in person, healthcare, tax, and customs. So those are, I think, areas where we really need to prioritize, and obviously, that will have important positive spillovers in other areas. What is the EU doing about this? Well, first of all, we have the Next Generation EU, as I mentioned before, and as Luis also mentioned in his presentation, that we have the first of all, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is there to provide large-scale financial support to public investments and reforms of public administrations to ensure that they can meet the digital target, meet the digital challenges, and very much help the public administration become more modern and fit for purpose. I don't want to go into many of the details, but we are working very, very closely with our 27 member states to ensure that we meet the target of 20% of the investments to be channeled to digital reforms and investments. That means that 134 billion euros over the life cycle of the recovery facility will be allocated to the digital transition. And part of that, of course, will be allocated to ensuring that we improve digital skills, but also the digitalization of the public administration. What we're seeing in our discussions with member states is a strong priority by member states to ensure that digital public that digitalization of the public sector is one of the priorities in their plans. What we can see from the draft plans that we have seen so far, at least 24 of the 27 member states have signaled their intention to use the recovery and resilience facility funds that are available for the digitalization of the public administration. So this is we very much welcome, and we hope that some of the challenges that I mentioned at the start of my presentation will be included. What are the most common reforms and investments that have been included so far? And like I said, this is just a preliminary overview, but maybe some of the things that some of these ideas may resonate. First, as I mentioned before, is the establishment of an electronic ID system, including the whole IT system around it. The second is the reforms to support the only once principle, or the one-stop shop principle. So making sure that businesses and citizens, when they have to access services, they only need to do it once. So, for example, digitalizing paper records, introducing the principle of digital by default. That's the second most common reform that we see. The third is e-justice. So developing legal changes to enable court summons to be delivered online, allowing for example, video conferencing sessions for court, developing a single electronic system for court cases, an online portal, that sort of thing. The fourth, and this is not surprising, is e-health. So introducing legislative changes and investments to implement e-prescriptions, e-health, allowing citizens to access their health files online, etc. And finally is also the use of novel technologies such as artificial intelligence or cloud technology to improve predictive capacity and decision-making within the public sector. Needless to say, while we welcome very much the reforms and the ideas that member states are coming with in their recovery plans to digitalize public services, we do recognize that there are a number of challenges which will require careful attention. We have the challenge of cybersecurity. Citizens want to know that if their records are being digitalized, whether it's tax, customs, health, whatever, that their data will be safe, that it will not be hacked. So this is obviously a major challenge. But we do see that there is a lot of ambition there. There's a lot of positive energy going towards moving to a much more user-friendly and streamlined experience for both citizens and business, but also for public officials, who I think will welcome having more streamlined systems to work with. With that, I think I've hopefully covered a lot of ground in terms of both some of the challenges that we're facing, but also how the European Union's Next Generation EU, and in particular the Recovery and Resilience Facility, will help promote the digitalization of public services. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you, Elisa. For those of you who are following us, we have more than 700 registrations for the event today. If you want to know more about what is in those draft plans, you can check a preliminary comparative analysis that my colleagues Marco Priori and Marina Blachadin-Tropoulou have published in our website and in our social media. You could have a look and maybe it will inspire for some of the actions. We are a bit short of time, but I would like actually just to make a short question, same for the three of you. We've seen a strong funding commitment from the EU to support the digitization of the public sector at different levels, structural funds, recovery plans at national, regional levels, but also the Connecting Europe Facility, even Horizon 2020. I think Ursula mentioned one example that they are doing in Austria at the pan-European level. The need is there, the money is there. So what do we need to see happen to see a futuristic public administration? We also heard some ideas from professors before: courage, creativity. What would you be, according to you, the key thing that we need to see happening for this futuristic public administration? Anyone there's to go ahead? Luis? We can't hear you, maybe you're muted.
Thank you so much. No, I think that two things that will be key to modernize the public administration. I think first is the change of mindset that we really need in both sides. So from citizens by itself, that is no more going to the traditional office spaces, but try to do everything online, but also from the public administration by itself. And I can give you this good example of Portugal, that through the last years we've been trying to digitalize public administration records, and every time that we deal with public administration, and it's really a big shift that we made. And the second main key change, I will say, that is also the cultural change that we have. So the culture that we have that also needs to change and to adapt and to be more modernized. And I also want to finalize just one thing. We also speak about, and that's why I brought a lot of things of data. But as you saw with Elisa or with Ursula remarks, we had very good examples in the public administrations, and we always need our data to modernize health records, or the e-justice, or even to bring the personalized education. So I wouldn't shy away of this mindset and cultural change that we need to bring to the table, and we shouldn't be afraid that the future of public administrations, probably they will be more efficient, they'll be more personalized, and we can probably give much more assistance to citizens that they are asking, usually the public administrations.
Thank you. Ursula?
Yes, I want to give only a short answer. What we need is dynamics and endurance. We need both of them, and I think what we are trying to do and what we implement within the infrastructure of administration is a space where we can have experiments, because it's very, very difficult to implement things into the structures of administration, of public administration, then you do not know what's the impact of what we are implementing in the public administration. So what we want to have in Austria, what we will do is to experiment in a space, in a real labor, in a legal sandboxing space where we can try and look at the impact of the things we implement before we change the public administration as a whole.
Thank you. And Elisa?
I would agree with Ursula and Luis. I would add that whilst I think it's really important to use this opportunity that we've been presented, never waste a crisis, as they say, to move to further digitalization. I think we also, and Luis mentioned this in his remarks, we need to not forget the personal touch. And we've all had that wonderful experience where we call up the phone company or the electricity company and we have a question about our bill, and we get the, please 8 options, dial 1 if you want this and dial 3 if you want that, or we go online and we're presented with 50 options of how we can access an answer to our question, and our question is not being answered. So I think the first thing that we need to remember is let's not forget that the personal touch. And sometimes citizens, businesses do want to speak to a human being, and they do want to have the opportunity to explain a problem or the background of a problem. So digitalization is great, but let's not forget that the human touch. The second, and that's a related point, I mentioned it in my remarks, is accessibility. We know that whether it's older people, disabled people, people who live in remote or rural areas, in poorer areas, just don't have access all the time to even a computer or a good internet connection. And it's great that in some countries, Luis mentioned Estonia, where it's now a basic human right, where you have high levels of connectivity. And that's almost a granted. But we have many, many regions and member states in Europe where that is not the case. And we need to remember that before we go for a full-fledged digitalization of public services, we need to make sure that the people have access as well as the skills necessary to do so, and to foresee a transition period if necessary. And that I close with that.
Thank you. I think it's a strong point of Europe to aim for a gender, social, green, inclusive innovation that doesn't leave anyone behind. I thank you very much for your words today, and I hope we keep in touch. And from EIPA, we are always happy to be a forum for exchange and learning from each other. Have a nice day, and we move to our next panel now. Now we would like to give the floor to our last speaker, Mr. Daniel Dotto, Acting Director and Head of Unit for Governance and Public Administration at DG REFORM at the European Commission. Stay with us. Hi again. Good morning, Mr. Dotto.
Good morning.
Thank you for being with us today. This conference cannot have a better timing because just 2 days ago the work plan was published. So we are looking forward to hearing from you what are the main aspects of the plan. The floor is yours.
Isain, thank you very much, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for hosting me today. I would just start with a personal background. When I was young, that happened too, and more precisely in 1981, I heard an Hollywood actor stating, "Government is not the solution to our problem, government is the problem." That could have probably gone unnoticed unless the actor was George Clooney or actually the President of the United States. Our discussions today tend to demonstrate that it is clear that if government can indeed be part of the problem, we have to make sure that it is also fully part of the solution. Of course, and more than that, I believe Europe is definitely a big part of the solution. So this morning, I would like to share with you some reflections about what we see happening at the EU level, the main challenges that we see appearing, and how we can support each other. I think we can all acknowledge that we live in a historical moment. That was said this morning, we don't need to dwell on that, but certainly the COVID-19 pandemics that started as a health emergency quickly disrupted several dimensions of our lives. Also for positive, I should say, because in my team we have had 3 baby COVID, either in progress or delivered, and also disrupted important areas of our economies. And here too, those that had shares in Amazon can now order good bottles of Rina without thinking twice about the price. Now, to recover and prepare for the future, we need to go through a deep adaptation of many of our aspects of our lives. We need to show resilience and we need to think positive. Public administrations in our systems and to us in this context have a triple challenge. They face a triple challenge. They need to be fit for today and manage business as usual in providing services and implementing policies. In parallel, they need to be ready to respond to any crisis. Crisis will occur, not just a crisis, and we must make sure that we mobilize all the necessary resources and act on issues for which there is even very little information. Public administration need to think ahead, need to anticipate the upcoming changes and identify optimal policy solutions that address the problems, but also create safety nets and enabling conditions for those that will be adversely affected. I think we can also acknowledge also that there is today an underlying issue. It was raised this morning, it was raised earlier today, and which is trust in public administration. Trust is fluctuating over time. At the moment, it's not sky high, and it is, however, fundamental for healthy and efficient relations between the state and citizens, for recovery and for resilience. The triple or quadruple challenge is not entirely new. We have been exposed to a series of crises in the past 2 decades, and more than that, if we start with the big oil crisis of the 70s. What the COVID-19 crisis brought over is a number of issues. First, the sense of urgency, but also the imperative to adapt, the need to think fast and act even faster, and the need to cope with the unknown in a social world. And I think we all know what this can mean, especially if you make mistakes. In order to be successful in building administrative capacity and capability, we all need to adjust our thinking about public administration and acknowledge that this is the backbone that will facilitate and lead the changes. No crisis can be resolved without a trusted and trustworthy professional public administration. No society can ensure its lasting well-being without quality of public policies and services. Commissioner Ferreira mentioned this morning that political buy-in and ownership of administrative change are critical factors for success. Unfortunately, we often see that there is limited attention to the needs of the administrative system to develop and adjust. Often, public administrations are the first to get cuts, freezes, top-down reorganizations, and of course, heavy criticism when things don't work. We have to listen to this criticism as well. Allow me to turn now to our experience, the Commission's experience. In the past 10-20 years, our analysis of events only reinforced the understanding that quality of public administration is critical for Europe to work well and to achieve its policy objectives for sustainable prosperity, for green and digital transition, for economic and social cohesion, for social fairness and justice, but also to allow the single market to fully bring to fruition its benefits. In this context, support to public administration in the EU member state has become a very important part of our work. Public administration is not an EU policy, as we all know, yet the Commission has identified several key priorities around which support to member states' public administration was and will be provided, and I will come to that in a moment. The first point of attention is the quality of policy making, which is the foundation for any successful reform and investment. I think we all know this, but just to repeat, policies need to be designed in an open fashion, using scientific, objective evidence, being informed from the evaluation feedback and analysis of past policies. Stability of legislation is critical for private investments and for the business to operate in a predictable environment. Yet we see that in many cases, conventional tools like impact assessments, public consultations, and evaluations are still lagging behind. In other cases, they're not lagging behind, but they're seen as a nuisance, as an administrative burden, as those who have to deploy them either have not been properly brought to appreciate their importance. We discussed about the importance of training officials, the importance and the advantage, or can see it is as an improper intervention in their area of power. Secondly, the quality of services demonstrates the ability of the administration to perform well. The increasing complexity, people mobility, digitalization bring the need to constantly adjust the service delivery to make it human-centric, ensure equal access through a range of channels, apply the principles and opportunities of digital public administration for more efficient and quality. Yet, there is still important disparity in the quality of services between countries, between the member states, between urban and rural areas, between central and peripheric areas, between digital and conventional channels. Digitalization, I mean, we've spoken quite a lot, so I will not develop too much, but this topic, digitalization of public administration, is a huge trend now. But it's actually, for me, way more than a trend. It is our life insurance. We can all survive only by going digital. Otherwise, others will do it for us. And as we have seen, the GAFAs and the other organizations of this planet are not waiting for us to move. They will move for us. Going digital, of course, raises a lot of questions and doubts. And I will quote, "But will we become the masters of the lightning or its slaves? What will we do with the endless hours of sunlight and ceaseless days of leisure? What will we build with the power of the gods at our fingertips?" These questions may sound familiar, but they were actually asked by journalists in 1900 when his town in the US was being enlightened through electricity. My point here is that we are confronted with a game-changer technology, a disruptive game changer at the moment, but it will be so much part of our lives, and we have to anticipate and integrate that, then in some years from now, we won't address it as a topic anymore, or a trend, just like we don't address the use of electricity nowadays. Now, coming back to digital, in addition to the big wave of digitalizing the services and internal process, a growing number of administrations, as we heard, for instance, from the Austrian examples or from Luis, are thinking how to use new technologies, such as artificial intelligence and blockchain, for better policy making and service delivery. Allow me to insist just on one point. Digitalization is more than digitization. New technologies need to be used and give us the push for that to rethink the way we operate and make our work processes smart. They cannot be used to consolidate obsolescent practices. They cannot be used to consolidate these practices that have been proving not correct. Follow-up, professionalism must be at the heart of public administration. The whole rationale of its existence is to use specific expertise and resolve issues for the benefit of the public good. Professional public administration is first of all rooted in having skilled and politically independent civil service, strategic workforce planning, merit-based recruitment, appropriate training and career development that provides a mix of mobility and result orientation. Our next priority, the next point that we see emerging very strongly is the need to reinforce accountability, openness, and transparencies. Citizen engagement and co-creation have to be ensured through several practices that allow for working across departments, across silos, that should allow for experimentation, prototyping, piloting, testing, and capturing and sharing lessons learned. We all know how much administration is risk adverse, but those administrations will not survive, simply as simple as that. Last but not least, is the need for sustainable, predictable, efficient, and transparent management of public finances. The ever-increasing complexity of public finances and the high focus on investment call for careful reconciliation of central planning with decentralized spending, strategic use of public procurement, modern accrual-based financial accounting, and reporting. Now, given that framework of priorities, let me outline how the European Union and the Commission more specifically support public administration. First, as we already said, through financial support, la force de frappe of the European Union. The Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is a very ambitious instrument, has a budget of, we heard, roughly 600-700 million, depending how you count that. It can support investments and reforms in public administration, that was very eloquently indicated by Elisa, by the Elisas, if I may say, and especially help address the country-specific recommendation for 2019 and 2020. For improving the quality and effectiveness of public administration and the predictability of this decision-making, accelerating anti-corruption reforms, and obviously digitalization of public services. These ambitious instruments require ambitious projects and reforms. The public administrations are called upon to think about projects with horizon long enough to meet such ambitious perspectives. The projects and the reform identified will need to be adapted not only to the current realities, but also to future uncertainties. Measures taken in the management of the health and recovery crisis will need to be forward-looking enough to guide and sustain the resilience of the system, ensuring sustainability of public finances, supporting the relevant social group, and innovative business environment. Sounds simple, we're trying to square the circle, but really this is something, these are the challenges that we're faced with. The Recovery and Resilience Facility provides huge opportunities, yet the unprecedented amounts will require public administration to demonstrate their utmost in preparing the national plans for recovery and resilience, for designing the reform, the strategic investment, and above all, for the implementation. The other big financial tool you heard about is, and Isaine referred to that in her introduction, is the technical support instrument, which is a critical instrument through which the Commission can continue to provide tailor-made expertise on the ground to ensure that the Member States have the necessary institutional and administrative capacity to develop and implement growth-enhancing reforms and are able to strengthen the resilience of European economies through efficient and well-functioning administrative structures. The TSI can also support the Member States in the preparation, amendment, and implementation of recovery and resilience plans, which will be one of the main tools, as we heard, the Recovery and Resilience Facility for the recovery, because it will provide large-scale financial support for public investments and reforms. Only in the last 2 years, the TSI, as some of you know, is elaborating on the previous structural reform support program. So it's the continuation of that successful program. We have helped carrying out 98 reform projects in the field of public administration in all the member states for a budget of 33 million euro. For this year, the TSI round, the one that was presented yesterday, we foresee that we will support member states in 41 projects for an amount of 23 million euro, addressing notably justice reform, digitalization, modernization of the state, and of specific services such as diplomatic services, anti-corruption, to quote a few. It goes without saying that several projects will address more or less directly the COVID emergency. Overall, what we have seen is that more than 60% of the projects that we are financing, not only in the area of public administration, actually will also help implementing and supporting the implementation of the recovery plans. Apart from these two very important financial tools, there are many others that I did not mention, such as Horizon and others. As Commissioner Ferreira underlined, the Commission is providing support to Member States in a wide variety of ways. We provide peer-based guidance and knowledge, and a good example here is the toolbox for practitioners on quality of public administration. We also provide capacity buildings and tools like competency framework. There are examples in the toolbox on how Member States are coping with taxation, custom authorities, public buyers, etc. So the idea here is to share information also, for instance, on managing big data. We also support member states by providing capacity building tools such as the exchange instruments TAIEX Regio peer-to-peer and Regio communities of practitioners, the Integrity Pact, the transnational ESF platform, etc. So there's a wide range of tools. We also help facilitating the exchange of knowledge and experience through, for instance, services like the Knowledge for Policy platforms that brings together policymakers and scientists across the EU for evidence-informed policymaking. Last but not least, the Commission promotes research and innovation in the areas of public administration. I refer to that notably through its Horizon program. Overall, stronger and more effective public administrations are fundamental for building resilient and sustainable economic structures that foster job creation and inclusive growth. The idea here is to address the structural challenges of public administration, as I could refer to them, for instance, in terms of competence, mobility, incentives, changes to work processes, etc. We also want to make sure that we develop adequate institutional and administrative capacity, which is crucial for well-functioning and sustainable economies and for underpinning the success of structural reforms. In addition, strengthening the administrative capacity of the member state will be key in preparing and implementing, again, the recovery and resilience plans that set out reform and investments to be financed under the facility. Allow me to conclude this intervention by thanking wholeheartedly the organizers of this important event, all of you for bearing with me till now almost lunchtime, my colleagues for the passionate and hard work in supporting efforts to improve public administration, and of course, Ronald Reagan for making sure that we would pick up this fight with passion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniele. It's 11:30, so I'm sure that many people, at least in Spain, are laughing about the lunchtime at this time. This is
this is breakfast time.
This is breakfast time. We have some questions from the audience. We have the first one. What kind of diversity from the staff in the public administration would be the best to suit the needs of the business right now?
I think the answer is in the question. Diversity, meaning that the public administration should represent the society as a whole. I think this morning we heard about gender. That is fundamental. Unbalanced organizations are not successful organizations, be it in the private or the public sector. But I think there's we heard this morning when one of the professors was talking about the possibility to have common principles or common orientation, and he said it's impossible. It's impossible to have one size fits all. So what I would like to say is that each organization must reflect the society in which it operates. However, sometimes you have to push it a little bit, because if you work, say, in a very machist environment, you cannot take it that your administration should reflect that. You need to push a little bit boundaries to make sure that it reflects the society as such. Of course, gender is one issue. You need to make sure that you integrate different social categories. You need to integrate different experiences, different competencies, all this knowing, if I may say, having this concept of workforce planning, where you want to go at the end of the journey.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that also a fair representation of the different cultures in Europe could help in this purpose of the European Union of not leaving anyone behind. Yeah.
Of course, if you take it at the European Union level, we must reflect Europe as a whole, obviously.
Yeah. Another question from the audience. Which challenges do you see for public procurement, especially related to the new funding instruments?
So for public procurement, we see two types of challenges: public procurement and in relation in particular to the funding instrument. I will take the second one. The amount of money that will go to the member state is unprecedented. It will be public money. There's a duty to make sure that it's well managed. So the challenge that we see here is to make sure that public procurement is done in full respect of the highest rules of integrity. In other words, we really have to fight corruption. We have to make sure that all the mechanisms to ensure that money goes for the intended purpose are there. We're working a lot with some member states that have I would say, a bit of a higher issue with corruption. We're developing strategies to fight corruption. We're developing action plans. We're putting in place structures, processes, and procedures in general terms for the national funds, for the EU funds, and in particular for these funds. Another set of reflections that we need to do on public procurement is how public procurement can help changing the society. We must make sure that public procurement allows for integrating small and medium-sized companies that we know, depending on the member state, represent even up to 95, 96% of companies in a country. They cannot be excluded from the market. We must make sure that public procurement respect high ethical, social, and environmental standards, and public procurement can be used as a way to green even more the administration and the economy, and that are helped to digitalize, and the digitalization helps public procurement. We have seen this in some member states. We have done a big project in one member state where we helped to completely digitalize the public procurement process for the EU funds with two objectives in mind: effectiveness, efficiency on the one hand, but the fight against corruption on the other hand. And I must say that we were very successful. We encountered a lot of resistance in the beginning, but it was very successful because we really could make the whole attribution process faster, more transparent, and totally accountable in that respect. We want to elaborate along these lines.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a bit more about green procurement?
Well, I'm personally not necessarily the expert on green procurement. We have a lot of colleagues that from DG Grow that work almost day and night on that aspect. But I think we have seen quite a dramatic shift in procurement, green procurement, to make sure that we can integrate environmental considerations when we launch procurement, that we respect the do no harm principle, that we respect exactly the environmental impact of the procurement, and we can put boundaries to what we're doing, which was maybe only 10, 15 years ago was basically a no-go because we thought that would limit competition. Now it's seen as an enabler of the evolution of society.
Mm-hmm. We also had some comments from the professors this morning talking about how difficult, I think that they were not very optimistic, on the coordination between local, regional, and national priorities when heading towards the recovery. What's your view on that one?
It is true. It is complicated. It is complicated for two reasons, because the organization of the state is very different from one state to the other. Some states are long-standing federal states, other are newer federal states, some are centralized, some are not. Some have more tradition and have very clear rules and the limitation of tasks, other not. So it is true, and we're working a lot on improving the tiers, the old tiers coordination. It is true to say that in some cases we have seen that maybe you have very good central administration and relatively poor local one because it was not trained, was not highly regarded. So we're working on the training at local level. We're working to make sure that the level, the central and the local level operate together. We have had important projects in some member states exactly for the use of the funds to bring together the headquarters, the capital, and the regions, but also the municipality, to make sure that they have good capacity to design projects, to deploy the projects, but also to control the projects. We come back to anti-corruption and efficient use of the projects. They have the capacity. Some municipalities maybe need to work on some civil engineering tasks, and they don't have the engineers. So how can you address that? They have to use funds and they don't have an auditor. There's no audit culture. How do you address that? So we're trying to take it as a global issue. But certainly this morning we heard that it's very important. We need to streamline and to put together in a logical line with clear repetition of tasks and responsibilities, the center and the local level.
I have a last question. We also heard this morning concerns about regions, member states having issues with the absorption of even the previous programming period structural funds. What is different this time? Why the Commission has hope that the member states will be able to absorb and implement efficiently this way of next generation?
What we heard this morning and what we can read in the both the recovery facility regulation and the TSI regulation, and that answers your question, what is different, is that we're putting together the reforms and investments. We can finance the reforms. The RF will largely finance the investment parts, and the two go together. And colleagues like Elisa and others that are looking at the plans are very careful in always looking at the two dimensions together. It was said this morning, with other words, that money is not the issue. One of the professors indeed referred to the experience on the structural funds as not being necessarily very positive. That were his words. I mean, he appreciates that, and he has his opinion, but the point is that what we're doing now, what we're really trying to do, is to put together capacity building, improving the reform, the governance processes, in order for the funds to arrive and in order for the funds to be efficiently used. So it's a combination of the two that is probably something new in what we will do.
Thank you very much. We will do our best to support the public administrations and in the path for recovery. And also want to thank you all very much for staying today here with us. You might have seen also in our social media that we have launched a call for applications for the 2021 European Public Sector Awards. So we are really looking forward to hear from you, to see what you're doing, to learn from you, and to reward your efforts at the end of this year. And you can follow us in our social media, on LinkedIn, Twitter, on our website. We will keep you posted on new activities. And hopefully we can see you all again in October in Maastricht, when we will be able to conclude maybe our 40th anniversary with a real toast. Until then, stay tuned and stay safe.